Reddit. What's the worst date you ever had? Came out from a movie, late at night, and date's Camaro was stolen. Apparently, he called his wife, that I did not know he had, and let her know where he was and what happened. She showed up and realized he was on a date. She started chasing me around the parking lot telling me she was going to kill me. Saved by the cops who showed up just in time to take the auto theft report. Well, I gave this answer on a different topic, but it ties in with this. We were out on a date, we had been seeing each other for a while, close to a year maybe. She gets a phone call. Suddenly she looks destroyed. Her fiancé had just died in a motorcycle accident. How do you even react in that situation? I was brought up in Poland by Polish parents, university professors, went to a Polish school, Polish university, etc. Then I had a date with an American man whose grandmother was Polish. He grilled me on the language and criticized my pronunciation and corrected my grammar. This from a guy whose Polish vocabulary was maybe 100 words. He told me I speak like a peasant. I don't even think that's how negging is supposed to work. LMAO. WTF was he doing? Met a girl at a country bar one night in my 20s. We were both pretty drunk but hit it off pretty good. Ended up getting her number and we agreed we'd go on a real date. Fast forward to the date, she gets in my vehicle and she looks almost identical to my mom. I was mortified. I was polite and we went for lunch where I found out she also had a boyfriend she wasn't sure if she was into. Never talked to her again. That's crazy, because I also went on a date with someone that looked exactly like your mom. For me, it was a date that never ended up happening. LOL. I had met a guy on a dating app eons ago. First date was a good one, we went to a hockey game and it was a really fun time. Then later in the week he wanted to see a movie, I was down. We quickly decided on a movie and what time we'd meet up. I arrived a little early and decided to just shop around casually as the theater was in a mall. I also bought some snacks to sneak inside because I am not paying a small fortune for theater snacks. LOL. As the startup time was creeping closer I shot some texts to him to see whereabouts he was because he was not there yet. He was 5 minutes late, so I wasn't too concerned just yet. He texted me back saying that he only just woke up and was now busy jacking off, that he'd be there as soon as he was done. I reminded him what time it was. I was a little irritated because 1. I had to drive an hour from outside the city to get there and he knew this, and 2. This was completely different behavior compared to the first date which had been really pleasant. The movie was set to start in 5 minutes, I had yet to get tickets because he said he would buy them. I am not sure what he was thinking, but when I told him that we were going to miss the showtime, he told me that if he was buying movie tickets for us that he expected at least a BJ afterwards or during the movie. I told him to drop dead and that I was leaving. I went out to my car, meanwhile he is texting me non-stop about how he didn't mean it. That he just had a dirty sense of humor and that he was on his way. He'd be there in less than 2 minutes. I told him I didn't think it was funny, I thought it was incredibly rude and inappropriate and that I had zero desire to ever see him again. Maybe I was overreacting, but I felt justified in my anger. Met a girl through a dating site and we agreed to meet up for dinner. I learned very quickly that this girl had absolutely no sense of humor whatsoever. I don't even think she cracked a smile the entire night. The date just got more and more painful as the night went on. At one point, we were talking about online dating. She told me about a friend of hers that went out on a first date with a guy online. She said this crazy guy fell absolutely in love with her friend and said he wanted to marry her. So I said, oh, well, I guess I shouldn't have picked up this engagement ring on the way here, then. She just stared at me blankly and said, that's not funny. Yes, it is. Fuck you. Got set up on a blind date once between mutual friends. She shows up to the restaurant already a little tipsy, orders multiple appetizers and only takes like 1 or 2 bites from each one. Then she proceeds to order 3 or 4 more drinks and is visibly drunk at this point. She gets up and says she's going to the bathroom and staggers off. About 15 to 20 minutes go by, so I try to call her several times but no answer. Finally I decide to pay the check and just leave. About 2 hours later I'm sitting at home and I get a call from an unknown number. It's the police department. She was picked up on a DUI on her way home after she ditched me and gave the cops my number to see if I could go bail her out. That is a bold move. How hard did you laugh at that? I smoked a lot of weed at the time and had a date with a girl I met on OkCupid who was 420 friendly. She told me to bring some with me, so we met at a Mexican restaurant at 7:30 and smoked in my car before going in. As soon as we finished the bowl, she was like, "Oh, I forgot, I have work at 8 tonight, bye." So she either went through all that effort to get smoked out one time, or she lemon-lawed me but still wanted to bum a smoke session off me. Either way, I was high as fuck and wasn't going to not get some enchiladas, so I went in and got a table for one. Love the confidence. Fuck it, I'ma get some food anyways. I've never had a legendarily bad date, but I've had a few very bad ones. Worst one was a dude I met on OkC. He'd seemed nice enough online, looked decent. We made plans to meet at a board games cafe, since he spoke pretty enthusiastically about loving board games and playing a lot of them. In no particular order, the problems were: he showed up 20 minutes late. He was significantly more overweight than he was in his photos. I assume they were old pictures. He was wearing a stained white t-shirt and cargo shorts, was visibly sweaty, it was February, and cold, and smelled awful. He hadn't told me that he clearly had some sort of mobility disability. I didn't ask, but I assume cerebral palsy or something similar. He walked with 2 crutches. This wouldn't have been an issue, but I felt very weird about the fact that he didn't tell me ahead of time, because the first thing out of his mouth was how the cafe was in such a shitty place with no disabled parking and he'd had to walk a significant distance. Dude, if I'd known, I'd suggested somewhere more accessible. He refused to order anything from the cafe, and instead drank only from the large bottle of water he'd brought in his bag. I had already covered his entry fee. Perhaps he really couldn't afford a £2 pint of Coke, but it came across as weird and rude. He didn't show any interest in any of the board games. My plan had been for him to pick a game he liked, and for me to pick a game I liked, and to play one after the other while we talked. After I clocked how difficult he found it to move around, I offered to go pick up whatever game his pick was. You could browse the shelves pretty effectively from a seated position. He had no ideas. Zero. Hadn't heard of any of the games. I finally brought over one of the games we'd talked about on OkC, Odin's Ravens, and he acted like he'd never seen it before, giving me the distinct impression he'd lied about liking games, or at least that one, for an unknown reason. Conversation was just generally very stilted. I kept bringing up topics: so, what do you do, who do you live with, are you a town native, what are your hobbies, what are you doing for the rest of this weekend, have you ever played game, and getting just nothing. Single word or short sentence answers. He didn't ask me a single thing. I don't know if he was just nervous, or autistic, or just decided early on that he didn't like me or what. But it was awkward as hell. I stayed the minimum I could to be polite, just over an hour. I sort of assumed he just wasn't having a good time, so I was utterly baffled when he then tried to hug me goodbye, not until you shower PLS, and tried to set up a second date. I gave him a vague response about staying in touch, then gave him the slow fade. I've never had a legendarily bad date. Proceeds to detail a legendarily bad date. On one date I showed up at her parents' house to pick her up, thinking we were going for drinks in the neighborhood. She opens up the door wearing sweatpants, trainers, and a hoodie as if she just got back from football practice. I was pretty well dressed, so she decided to change into something else. She says I can just wait in the living room with her parents. Not that bad, we have some small talk and I expect to be leaving soon anyways. She then shows up wearing the next less than casual outfit and sits down in the living room as well, saying nothing. She just gets on her phone. She's doing nothing but texting whilst I'm left talking with her parents. Didn't expect a date with them. At this point I don't know what to expect anymore. Luckily I was able to convince her to go out after a bit and we end up having drinks. All in all, she wasn't my type, definitely after that date.